It's easy to look around and notice everything wrong in your city. In this podcast by Every Neighborhood Partnership, join Grace and Andrew as they invite friends, activists, pastors, leaders, and city workers to discover what's good in the neighborhood. Join us for insightful conversations that will encourage you to see your city and its people in a new way.
Welcome to What's Good in the Neighborhood. On this episode, we intro our new series, SoulCare and Leadership. We're really excited about it. Grace and I just kind of talked through why this topic came up, what we're looking forward to in the series, and define some terms or, some pop culture elements of soul care and leadership. So we're looking forward to this episode series, and get ready, buckle up.
Hello, welcome back to What's Good in the Neighborhood. I'm Grace.
I'm Andrew. That was the most coy intro. Hello. It's good to be with you all.
It's good to be with you all. We're back. We were just talking about how we're not here a lot in the studio.
Yeah.
So we're doing them in batches. So it's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
It's very good. And, just props to everybody that listens. It's been really fun to just at random moments throughout the city, throughout my workday, people are like, oh man, really love that episode. So I think, again, feel free to email Grace and I, Andrew at Every Neighborhood, Grace at Every Neighborhood, if you have an idea, a topic. But it's been really fun to know that, there's actually, and we see it in the, the numbers, but people are actually listening. And this is, there's a cohort of friends, of donors, of volunteers, of people that just believe in what we do, that listen in. And so thank you so much for doing that.
Always surprises me. Yeah. Literally. Everyone's like, I love listening to the podcast. I'm like, what? Yeah. There's real people that are watching and listening. So, it's so great.
Thanks for dedicating time to these conversations.
Yeah, 100%. Which kind of leads us into our next series. As Andrew and I chatted through what we wanted to talk about next, that's kind of what's running us is what do we want to learn about?
Yeah.
And who do we want to talk to?
Yeah.
And are there people, our listeners, that also maybe are interested in the same stuff as us?
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And I think, so the next series for us, the bucket term we're putting it under is soul care and leadership. That could mean a lot of different things. So this episode really will be kind of exploring just what does that mean? Where are we going in the series? What's our own experience? And then as we, have future episodes, those will be with guests, exploring their different kind of buckets of work and history. So, Grace and I think, are in this moment of for us as leaders, for the church's current moment, it feels even coming off the hills of immigration, we're in a moment that character, what type of person are we becoming is, I think, a really relevant question for us as leaders.
Yes, 100%.
And especially as kids that kind of grew up in this, I grew up in the moral majority of character matters, our president's character matters. We're looking around going does it matter? And who are we going to be as leaders ourselves? And so this topic of soul care and leadership, as we go through it, we're hoping to, talk through subjects of conflict, recovery, nurturing our spiritual and emotional health, boundaries, therapy, coaching. It'll be a wide bucket of stuff. But I don't know, give me a little context, Grace. What's your kind of interest in this topic, or why did you, when I threw it out there originally, you're yes, let's do that.
Well, I think also important context is that recently as a staff, we went through Ruth Haley Barton's Soul Care of Your Leadership series on Sermon Now, I think it's, or Seminary Now.
Yeah.
Which highly recommend. If anyone wants to do an actual deep dive on this, her book and then the Seminary Now study was amazing. So we did that together as a staff over a series of weeks during our staff meeting time. And I think what I loved about how she framed it biblically under Moses and the story of Exodus and how he leads the people. But then also, we're a bunch of doers in this place, nonprofit. Holler, if you're out there in the nonprofit world, you're probably built to do stuff. It's not easy for us to slow down, to quiet our spirits. So I'm excited because at the end of this series, we're going to sit down with our own staff, do kind of a roundtable, and talk about like, what does this actually look like for you in your workplace? And so, yeah, I think that as people who are prone to work with our hands and not slow down our hearts, it's important for us to learn how to take care of ourselves as we take care of other people.
Yep.
So I think that's a big reason why this matters to me is I know a lot of people who are leading that are constantly giving out of an empty space, and that's not sustainable. So I think there's a conversation to be had around like you want to go to bed every night exhausted and not exhausted to the point where like you've forgotten who you are.
Yeah, I think in my realm, I'm hitting my 40. I hit my 40s this year,
Wow.
so
Amazing.
I do feel it in my knees. But as I hit my 40s, I'm also now looking at like I'm not the young guy in the room anymore. And then I'm watching a generation. We're in a generational shift in Fresno. Especially, I see this where in this last couple years, and there's a couple more folks in leadership, but there's been a lot of handoffs of ministries, of churches, of big institutions in our community. And I'm watching leaders, and we're seeing it across the United States. Leaders that did it well and are passing off something that's beautiful.
Mm,
It's lasted. They've lasted. And then I'm also watching a lot of ministry leaders, nonprofits, public institutions where the leadership is failing,
right.
whether it's around like sexual indiscretion, crimes,
Hmm.
some sort of immorality, or just like toxic leadership,
Hmm.
really, or racist leadership. Like whatever it is, you're watching those things going, man, there is a whole like, how do I do 20 more years at this and end my career with my marriage strong? My
Hmm.
kids actually want to hang out with me,
Hmm.
and those around me going, not a perfect guy, but like led well,
Yeah.
did the best he could with what was given to
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. I think that the slippery slope that could be found there is we create our own moral majority based upon like our own like series of spiritual disciplines. Thinking like if we just do these things well enough or good enough, then we'll get to that point of result or success. And I think something that we wanted to define in this conversation around spiritual formation is that spiritual formation is not self-help
Mhm.
and it's not even self-care. Like there's aspects of that and all those things are helpful tools, right? We're going to talk probably about a lot of tools on this podcast. The tool is never the solution. At the center of spiritual formation is that Jesus provided us a model of how to be, how to become, and to be like him in his sufferings. And so we're invited into the gospel. So the gospel is the central part of spiritual formation. Without it, this is all just going to be a lot of tips, tricks, and tools, and could easily look like self-help, self-care. And so, yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, how do we become less like uh, morally superior as we pursue these things, and more like I do these things because I'm needy. I need these things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think like to do what Jesus does, you have to be with Jesus, and I think that's the main idea. Like there is some world in which, it's just like anything in faith, anything in discipline, it's always a balancing act for me of like you have to have a vision of what you want, of what the good life is, and then you have to begin to move towards that. So
Mm-hmm.
there is self-discipline. Like none of this stuff
Mm-hmm.
happens overnight.
Right.
And also, it is the work of God to shape you into the person you're called to
Yes.
be. I think to hang out with Jesus, to do Jesus stuff, you got to be like Jesus, which means you got to do the things he did, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of that is a work of God and a work of human hands, of priority and schedule. I think for me, yeah, the when Jesus says like, "Come to me, all who are weary and laden, and I'll give you rest," like that's the invitation for all of life,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the invitation for our leadership. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of it, like, yeah, if it's just about buffeting our world to be safe and secure or make me the best, truest version of Andrew, like,
Mm. Mhm.
that's just still not it.
Right.
Like, it's called to like be the person as I'm giving my life away to others that also doesn't try to be Jesus.
So
I am
good.
not Jesus. I can't take on the weight of the world's responsibilities,
Yeah, his
all the
deity.
problem
Yeah.
yes, all the problems that I wanna fix, like, I also need to admit my own brokenness, my
Yeah.
own, like, need for him, my own need for others, my own
Yeah.
need for help, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, everybody has their own thing where, like, I think a lot of people just need to get up and do something.
Mhm.
Mine's probably the opposite of, like, "Hey, you actually don't have to be responsible for that person's
Yep.
reaction, their
Mm.
plan, them not doing that thing." Like, you actually can also just sit there and enjoy the world and
Yeah.
not try and fix it. Like, that's we each have a unique challenge in our spiritual
Yes.
formation. That's probably more mine,
Yeah.
as a leader and as a doer.
Well,
But
and I
yeah.
think a lot of leaders could probably identify with you in
Yeah.
that. Like, I know I can. I love the phrase, "I just need to figure this out,"
Yeah.
which is just code
Yeah.
for like, I'm gonna control this
Yes.
until I can't, you know? And I think sometimes leadership is just a cool code word for like, I love to control
Yeah.
stuff, you know? So there's an invitation for all leaders there to be like, what would it look like for you to lead with like legitimate open hands? Yeah, I love that. Jesus is not just Savior and Lord. There is a deity there that we are not.
Yeah.
And he's model. So the things that he does and the way that he made space to get away, to spend time with the Father, what does that look like for us? Especially today in 2025 that could be its own podcast
Yeah.
episode about all the culture and
Yeah.
our even just our pace of life.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, Steve Cuss, he has a book, or he has a podcast, and then he's got a bunch of books. But Steve Cuss has a podcast called Being Human, and his thing is he does a lot of work with family systems, and he talks about being human sized. Like
mhm.
often, as leaders, we are not human sized. We think we're bigger, and we take on things that are just. Yeah, are you actually live in human size? I'm like, oh, that's a good question.
Yes.
Yeah, I think in the self-help, where do you feel like how has that culture kind of permeated your own life,
Mm,
or your friends,
mm,
the culture the places you hang out?
mm.
Um,
Yeah. I think I'm in a generation that really loves this idea of slowing down, to the point where, like, it's kind of become its own like, that's become the goal is, like, I live a slow down pace of life, which I actually don't think is what we're called to. Like, specifically in the conversation around spiritual formation, I've seen, like, even within my own peer group, my own community, like if I start to practice the disciplines and be about formation, it often just becomes about me, like what we're talking about. It begins to like concave on itself, which is something I'm like, as I've watched it like play out, I'm like, I don't think this is what Jesus is calling us to do. So it's been helpful for me to reframe it just personally, and we don't have to use this like throughout the series, but as missional formation, as like I do these things because God has invited me into restoring the world back to
yeah, yeah,
himself.
yeah.
And so that means that I should be about others and that the things that I do to make space to hear from God will probably lead me to sacrifice my time,
Yeah.
energy, and efforts for the sake of others. And so it's less about like, I'm going to do all these things and get exhausted for the gospel, and more so about like, how can I abide, literally, like John 15, like abide with Jesus in order to see the fruit, which is that we would give away our lives to other people. So I think that's the way that I've seen it play out in my own like community and place and things that I'm even processing for myself of like, this could easily become just like its own little mini subculture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah.
There's always a pop version of something that's a
Yes.
helpful tool, right? So it's like
Yes.
the pop version, like Enneagram has maybe faded a little bit, but
Yeah.
like Enneagram just became a personality tool that is something I can know more about myself
Yeah.
and
Or an
not
excuse.
an excuse to be
Yeah.
like, I don't have to do this, or boundaries
Mhm.
is a really helpful, term and idea and framework of like, we need healthy boundaries, but then I can just say, I have a boundary on that and I can't do that for you, or
Yes.
I won't respond to that thing.
Yes.
And that's just a cop out of a way around, some
Yeah.
occasion. So I think there is I think that happens at any human, anything that gets labeled, then there's a light version of it that is really missing the mark.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's 100% happening in the formation world. So I think in my own life, when I am like introduced to or confronted with another spiritual discipline that Jesus modeled, I'm always going to ask myself, like, how does this help me move in towards other people? And how does this help me to hear his voice more clear? So there will be moments where I am sacrificing the culture and pace of our culture so that I can hear him. Just even chatting with a lot of young adults, the question I get all the time is like, I don't know how to hear his voice. Like, I don't even know what that even means. And one of the first questions I ask is like, how much time do you spend on your phone? Or like, how often are you just like connected? Our culture and our pace don't will not sustain a life with Jesus. And so we're going to have to say no to things along the way. And so I'm looking forward to that in this series of like, what are the things that my life will probably have to shift in order for me to make space to become more like Jesus?
Yeah.
At Every Neighborhood Partnership, we believe that strong, vibrant communities start with engaged, empowered residents. But to make that happen, we need your help. EMP is on a mission to connect neighbors, create opportunities for local leadership, and transform neighborhoods through education, collaboration, and advocacy. And every dollar you donate goes directly to supporting programs that make a real difference, whether it's providing land use education, elementary literacy mentoring, or healthy spaces to help kids and families grow. When you donate to Every Neighborhood Partnership, you're not just giving money. You're investing in a future where every neighborhood in Fresno has the tools and resources it needs to thrive. Your contribution, big or small, helps ensure that our communities have a seat at the table in the decisions that affect them most. So, if you believe in students excelling, community members that are healthy and whole, and our neighborhoods thriving, we invite you to make a donation today. It's simple. Just visit everyneighborhood.org or tap the link in the show notes to give. Your support helps develop the next generation of leaders like Fresno depends on it. Donate now to Every Neighborhood Partnership.
Ever wondered what makes your neighborhood unique? Or the history of your city that shapes the places you love? Well, now you can explore the city like never before, right from your own car, using the Voice Map app. Introducing Every Neighborhood Partnership's Drive Tour, a self-guided audio tour that brings your community's history, landmarks, and stories to life. As you drive through local streets, EMP's Drive Tour will guide you with fascinating insights from people, places, and events that have shaped your neighborhood. Whether you're discovering hidden gems, learning about community activism, or simply enjoying a fresh perspective on familiar places, this tour is a great way to connect to your community in a whole new way. So what are you waiting for? Tap into Every Neighborhood Partnership Drive Tour today on VoiceMap and get to know your community like never before. Download the VoiceMap app, search for Every Neighborhood Partnership Tour, and start exploring today. Fresno's story is waiting to be discovered. As we designed and started inviting folks into this series, really it's people that have shaped us, right? So sometimes it's some concepts or ideas that we've experienced, but it's also those people that have been, just offered new ways of thinking or being. So, maybe as we thought about those topics, what are some of the topics or kind of main ideas that get you excited?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this idea of conflict. Like, I don't know, there's just something about knowing how to step into conflict well and that actually forms you, like as a person.
Our friend Dave Albwald will be on, and Dave has, I'm sure he'll tell many embarrassing story about me, as he was my manager and boss for years and then has become a dear friend, but he helped coach me through a lot of conflict.
Yes. I'm honestly, that conversation I'm really excited for, and we'll hopefully also get to chat with him about recovery. And as we were chatting, it was like conflict and recovery go hand in hand, not just like addiction recovery, but any type of habitual behavior that you have that keeps you entangled. To be able to like cut the vines of those things is going to require that you probably find yourself in moments of tension or friction. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to having on folks that have had experience with, some of the practices that have really been helpful for me as a leader have been spiritual direction and coaching.
Yeah.
This last year, I've had an executive coach. And people that can see the path for you or call out things in your life that you're just not giving credence and attention to have been really, really helpful. And it's always like, and the same with therapy. We don't have a plan to have a therapist on, but like therapy, life coaching, spiritual direction, they all have a different angle at the same thing where it's a guide outside of you that can point out something. That it's strange for me it's always, those meetings are always weird. And then I always walk away like, wow, that was really helpful to have a voice outside of me, cause me to listen to the Lord, cause me to see a new thing, direct a new vantage point in myself and my leadership and what God would do.
I'm looking forward to that too. Hopefully we get to hear more about your own personal journey with your spiritual director. I think another one that we really want to dive into is emotional health. I heard a quote recently that we're all kids. Our brains are still like kids. Our bodies have just gotten bigger. And so often the way that we react, if anyone has kids, they know like if your kid has a big reaction, if you haven't done the work, you're going to react the same way, just in a bigger body. And so what does it look like for us to be able to recognize when we're having the really big feels and how that interacts with not only our vocation, but our leadership, our ministry, the people that we interact with. And so I'm really looking forward to that one too, just to kind of do a deeper dive on like what makes you you and why do you react the way that you react emotionally.
Well, and I think the aha I had a couple of years ago, Jay Pathak, who leads the Vineyard denomination conference. I don't know what they're called, but he talks about how we had this false dichotomy that our spiritual health and our emotional health are different, but like that your spiritual health can never outstrip your emotional health. And then just watching like the generations around us who are not examples of those things matching. And I think that's what the next generation is either one, finding critique in the church, or two, looking for. Like we actually want healthy we don't have healthy role models and healthy humans that we can actually follow, that we trust with our spiritual life, with the Lord. And also they know how to handle conflict or these issues, or are just humble or can admit when they've done wrong, right? Like, so I think as leaders ourselves, like those are things we're trying to practice and say that it really is important. Your emotional health and your spiritual health have to match up and both take work and reflection and again, your own work and the work of the Spirit to shift you.
I think that's maybe why there's like a gap between like what you're talking about in the beginning, like a baton, like a handoff. Like people don't pass off the baton well because they don't have the emotional health to have the humility to look behind them and go, who can I actually like pour into, foster into? There's such a gap there.
They're still thinking about themselves, like you said.
I'm excited. I think there's a lot here that like we both care about, that we're passionate about, that we are hopeful that our listeners too are interested in hearing about. So
we're always going to just follow our passions. And then the things, for EMP, as you all know, or maybe you don't know, but like both being Jesus-centered is a value for us and wellness is a value for us. And so these things, we know that we lead out of who we are. And so the conversations, the type of people we are becoming is a big conversation for us. And as a leader, I try to lead out to be like, this is the thing I'm learning. This is the resource I'm grabbing onto right now. And to model that for, just be confessional with like, this is the growth area that I'm facing. Sometimes I do it really well and then sometimes I don't, but like as a group that this is a standard conversation we're going to have. And then as a community, this is also something I think that like the larger faith community in some ways is coming around to, I think, the depths of it. We can always just hope for more.
Yes, totally. As an encouragement, I wanted to end our time with a quote because maybe if you're listening, you're feeling like, well, I'm not a pastor. I'm not like leading in any space. This conversation might not be for me. I love this quote from Nathan Foster out of Renovare. And he says this: self-care is often seen as a luxury. Selfish care is the norm. Intentional soul care is too often reserved for clergy, retired persons, or something we intend to get around to. Instead, the default is to drown. It is imperative for the human race to learn how to intentionally navigate life at a livable pace. There are profound spiritual consequences to the current pace of life we are thrust into. Our world is literally dying for a different way to live. So yeah, that's an encouragement as we head into this series that this is for you. If you don't think it is, I promise you it is. There's something for you in the series. And so we're really looking forward to diving in together. And like Andrew started with, we want to hear from you. So email us.
All right. We'll see you soon in the next episode.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to find out more about EMP, you can visit us at everyneighborhood.org or follow us at EMP Fresno. Every Neighborhood Partnership and this podcast exists to activate, equip, mobilize, and transform here in Fresno and beyond. If you liked what you've heard, please share and review what's good in the neighborhood wherever you listen. We'll see you next time.